Hello and welcome to this rather wonderful edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and tonight we are joined, as always, by the lovely Kerry Greenaway and Richard Clements. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. How's your week been?
Well, sort of quiet. I spent most of it on my own. But apart from that, I just feel, we're doing our bit. Well, I'm doing my bit and, just getting on with things.
Yeah. Plenty of research in the bag.
Well, yeah, I've done a bit for this show, actually.
Excellent.
It's one of those situations, isn't it, where, like, you're in, but you want to go out, but you can't go out, and it's like, it's fine, though. I'm actually finding it quite cathartic. Is that the word, cathartic?
Yes, I suppose you could call that. I mean, but as we was talking the other night on Skype, you tend to go through little stages of feeling a bit lethargic and stuff like that. But I think everyone's feeling that, and I would generally say, just try and roll with it. And this is not going to go on forever. But whilst it is happening, we just have to sort of follow the advice given and just get on with it.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate to everybody, there's a lot of false information and fake news going around at the moment, and while you've got the time, maybe do some background research. If you think you see something and it scares you, do some background research. We were talking about 5G last night on Skype.
Yeah.
The three of us were sitting there talking about 5G. And when we actually started to break down the figures and stuff like that, it wasn't adding up to that's what's causing coronavirus. You know what I mean? So it's a piece of conspiracy. I'm not saying I don't know. I don't know the dangers of 5G and whether or not it's relevant or not. But when we started looking at one tiny area, there was no 5G there, but people are still having coronavirus symptoms and, cases and, even deaths in that area. So there's no correlation. And that's something that's being put out quite a lot by the sceptical community. Just because sometimes there seems to be a correlation doesn't mean it's connected. So don't get too carried away with the fake news and stuff. Follow the guidelines, do what you can do your bit, and just stay safe. And don't get too freaked out by the fake, is what I would say.
And you're totally right there, Kerry. And even if you feel you're not doing anything, I mean, you are just simply staying in. You are doing a lot to help. So don't feel pressured that you should be sort of being, sort of sitting around, sort of doing lots of things. I mean, just be. I would say, just be.
From a spiritual perspective, we all talk about sitting in the present moment, being still and sitting in the present. And now you're given the opportunity to do that. And it's very difficult when you don't do that, you know what I mean? When you're busy with the day-to-day and you're getting on with your life and, the mind chatter goes on, doesn't it? But now you're almost like forced to sit, be still and be present in this moment. This is the only moment that counts. So think about that and do whatever it is that you want to do in that present, as long as it's within the guidelines, obviously. And, learn about yourself, do that work for yourself. It's time that you can do that inner healing work that you want to do. Very spiritual perspective, that one. But, it's a good time to do it. You've got the time to do it. And don't feel bad if you're not setting the world on fire with achievement either. There are some people out there that are very good at that, very self-motivated individuals. And if that's not you, that's not a bad thing either. So, you just concentrate on you, yourself, and your position and your unique circumstance and deal with it within the guidelines and turn off the socials after time is the thing, isn't it? Just turn them off. Do something else. Watch a movie. Paul watched a great movie yesterday, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
You didn't think you'd ever watch this movie, did you?
No. The Greatest Showman. I didn't think, no. It wasn't sort of my film, but then I got to watch it. It was quite good. I enjoyed it.
I love it.
Yeah. Although I can't understand why they keep bursting into song.
You never really struck me as a musical type of guy. I haven't actually seen the film, but that's definitely on my watch list now, considering what we're going to talk about this today. So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the topic on the table today is actually P.T.
Circus.
Barnum. Right. Strange one when you think paranormal, P.T. Barnum. Does it have any relevance to the paranormal? Well, it does. So we're going to bring you through a whistle-stop tour of P.T. Barnum. Now, if you've watched the musical, this actually has no relation to the true story, which leads on to next week's show, but we'll talk about that at the end. So you don't take, the film and the musical as how it all happened and how it played out, because it didn't. It's a whole different ballgame, which we're going to take you through. And we're going to show you how something completely possibly unconnected or seemingly unconnected to the paranormal is actually quite connected to the paranormal. Right, guys?
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah.
Because this led us down to a whole different rabbit hole, everybody, is all I'm saying. So, P.T. Barnum himself, what do you think when you hear that name, guys?
I think instantly of the Barnum statement, which we're going to be talking about a bit later in the show, and more work to do with the spiritualism stuff. But that wasn't till later in his life, I think. So
that's what it meant to you before the film you saw yesterday, obviously. And Richard?
I think he was the ultra entrepreneur of his day. He sussed it all out. It seemed to come so naturally to him. He sort of was around at a time when sort of entertainment and stuff was not really sort of looked upon as being a legitimate sort of business path. But he took something and he tapped into the public psyche and actually gave the public something quite amazing. I mean, sort of gave them what they had been craving for up until that point.
Apparently so. For me, his name, before we did the research, conjured up the show business. The ultimate show business, you know what I mean? The person who would put on a great big show, marketing in a way that had never been done before, bringing a whole perspective of life and curiosity and freak show, the Victorian freak show, was what P.T. Barnum conjured up in my head before we did the research on this show. And he comes across as an incredibly charismatic, sometimes ruthless character. When you start reading about him, he's a very... You can't pin his character down specifically, because on one hand his acts would do something that you would find quite repellent, particularly with modern eyes, and then in other ways you respect his business skill for the marketing he did at the time. And then in other hands, you think, oh, how brilliant is that? Do you know what I mean? You think that's admiration for how brilliant that was. But he doesn't seem to be as benevolent or as compassionate as he comes across in the movie. Quite frankly, he's quite a lot more ruthless than that. So he was born Phineas Taylor Barnum in 1810 in Connecticut, wasn't he, guys? Richard, do you want to take it from there?
Well, apparently from a very young age, he was actually a natural salesman, and he was sort of peddling snacks and something called cherry rum to soldiers by the age of 12.
That sounds yummy.
cherry rum. And from those humble beginnings, he actually sort of made income from it. So he was able to sort of... I don't know quite how old he was and when he done this, but he was able to actually purchase some livestock. So he certainly sort of knew how he was sort of like going to start making money. But by the age of about 21, his holdings actually included stuff like a general store. He ran a small lottery, and he even owned his own newspaper. So, that is quite a feat, you think, for somebody at the age of 21. So, I mean, his sort of young life, he seems to have been a born sort of entrepreneur, I suppose you would call it.
Didn't he run a boarding house as well?
Yeah, well, he actually moved to New York as a young man, and yes, and he did actually open a boarding house in New York, and he also run his own newspaper as well, which I should imagine he learnt a lot from, sort of newspaper editing and stuff like that. So he obviously picked up a lot of sort of skills that he would develop later on in life.
He definitely learned how to do the media spin at that point of his life, I would have thought. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that you can earn money. It's how you use that money to progress rather than... I mean, a lot of kids at that age, peddling snacks and cherry rum would have, spent their little bit of money on sweets or something like that for themselves. But he didn't. He sort of
cows.
Yeah, cows instead, for example. But when he hit New York, this is really when Barnum came into his own, wasn't it? And, I mean, there was a whole history in between, but in 1835, he started his career in the entertainment business. Now, this one is a little... You've got to put yourself in the time, haven't you?
Yes, you have, yes. This is all time relevant. I mean, just...
Yeah. Because obviously slavery... actually was outlawed in New York and Pennsylvania at this time, but there were loopholes. He came across a lady called Joyce Heath, and he leased her for $1,000 a year. Now, he only had 500 of those dollars, and so he borrowed a further $500 to get the $1,000 for this lease of this lady a year. He marketed the hell out of her as a blind slave, an 161-year-old former nurse of George Washington, of all things.
Yeah. Makes sense, why not?
Yeah.
And he marketed her as the most astonishing and interesting curiosity in the world. Not just in America, but the whole wide world, everybody. 161.
That's it. Yep. Makes me want to go and see him right now.
This poor lady, you can just imagine, can't you? He actually put her on display in New York and even took her on a small tour of New England. And people lined up. They lined up to see this curiosity and this poor withered blind lady, and to hear her tales of little George Washington and, the background. I mean, George Washington, huge name in American history.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you can imagine the curiosity of being able to speak to somebody who was so integral into his upbringing, the former nurse. She had probably made up many, many a tale to entertain her visitors, as they called them.
Yeah.
And when it started to fade, when this, curiosity, started to wane, Barnum then added another level to this, didn't he? He actually said that she was he spread a rumour that she was actually an automaton controlled by a ventriloquist. which actually sort of put fresh blood into it. You know what I mean? It sort of freshened it up, and everybody's like, "Oh, it was a ventriloquist. Let's go and have another look at it." So they went back.
Let's go and have another look.
And this is actually key in Barnum. He was very, very good at this. when interest started to fade, he'd find another angle that would push the interest back up again. So he really made the most of this £1,000 investment of a lease for her. So you can imagine, I actually found something from the New England Courier that said about, gosh, this is awful. Those who imagine they can contemplate with delight a breathing skeletons subjected to the same sort of discipline that is sometimes exercised in a menagerie to induce the inferior animals to play unnatural pranks for the amusement of barren spectators will find food for their taste by visiting Joyce Heath. Well, Heth.
What? There you go.
Sorry, George Heth. Joyce Heth. God, I can't even speak. Yeah. So that is what was being touted by other media outlets about it. So they were being quite disparaging about that. They weren't actually being very positive and going, "Oh God, yeah, great, go and see it." But it was sort of saying, basically, if you're a bit twisted in your mind and you like looking at things that are a bit cruel, off you go and see her.
Yeah.
But
you're gonna like it.
He never saw anything as bad publicity. He would sometimes court controversy to get that interest up, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he would, and as you said, he would tour someone like this lady, and then once, as you say, it would wane, and then he'll just add something else onto it to get them all to come back. I mean, it's brilliant advertising.
He was a fantastic marketer, and we do see this time and time again. And that what I found interesting about this particular one was it's a macabre interest, isn't it? That people have. That people have. We all have it to some level or other. To see something not normally seen, whether that's a breed of animal that hasn't been seen before, or a rare animal. We see that in zoos. Even today we see that in zoos, particularly the breeding programs. Rare, I don't know, black rhinoceros has given birth, and everyone rushes to see the black rhinoceros. Something as we all know what a rhinoceros looks like, but people do it still. But back in these days, it was very the curiosity, the macabre, the expansion of the new world, of getting actually access to some of the more strange and unusual things that people had never seen before. And he bought
like
into
a giraffe
this.
and things like that.
Yeah, he bought into this.
I think this runs and hand in hand with the expansion of the press at the time. More foreign sort of news articles than would have been appearing, and so that sort of run alongside people like Barnum, who could actually sort of bring, or say he brings, sort of a touch of the outside world to them, which they wouldn't normally actually see.
And the world back then was a weird and mysterious place. Countries were being discovered, and cultures were being discovered, and creatures were being discovered. It was a huge period of discovery, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a more widespread way than has ever been known before. Now, the truth about Joyce didn't really emerge until after her death in 1836. Now, he even utilised that, which this is the piece I think, where it goes too far. But Barnum staged a public autopsy. It was a 50-cent admission price.
Mm-hmm.
And he staged a public autopsy. People had never had access to autopsy before, on a general scale, I would say. Yes, it was done by the medical industry, and if you was training to be a doctor, you would have had access to autopsies. But a public autopsy, everybody, imagine that one.
That's right.
This is where you go, that's a little too far, that's a little too ruthless.
No, I think I'd be like, take my money.
Well, you're interested in such weird things, Paul, but yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But, I mean, well, it wasn't that unusual to actually have the public sort of at autopsies at the time, but under these sorts of circumstances, and particularly as it's Barnum, you would think, he's got an ulterior motive to do it.
Yeah, money out of it. The autopsy actually revealed that Joyce was actually only around about 80 years of age, not 161 as he'd been touted. But this sort of goes to show that he wasn't afraid to tailor a story for the public to buy into, that people wanted to believe that she was 161 and the former nurse of George Washington, and they got what they paid for.
Well, it's sort of, there's a natural progression, because at first he touted her as sort of like her age, and then that waned, and so he touted her as a ventriloquist dummy of sorts. Then everyone came back and saw that, but I suppose the finishing sort of part of the show was her autopsy. So
ring them for everything, every cent he could get, basically.
Yeah, he certainly did wring every cent he could get out of that poor lady, and nowadays we'd find that completely unethical and moralistically wrong. But back then, it kind of wasn't viewed like that. Certain newspapers were a bit, if that's what you like, then that's what he gives you. But generally, the public flocked, I say.
Yeah.
Yes.
He did this with a lot of other acts as well at this time. This was before he became really big. He toured with a lot of other acts. Jenny Lind is another one, which was featured actually in the musical.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was featured in the musical.
Yeah, the Swedish Nightingale she was billed as, famous singer, opera singer, voice of a nightingale.
Yeah, I mean, in the film, it's almost like she sees through him at the end.
Yeah, but Barnum is sort of like, even though he's more sort of famous for his sort of circus and his museum, he was actually responsible for actually sort of bringing high culture to America as well with Joyce, it was, or Jenny, sorry, and sort of bringing the opera to the masses as well.
Yeah.
So he had his fingers in so many different pies, and he's responsible for so many different things culturally.
He didn't get stuck in the same genre thing at all, did he?
No, he wasn't scared to sort of jump from this to that, and which shows his sort of, daring, would you say? I don't know, but yeah, I suppose it shows his sort of his courage, and it was the whole sort of world was his canvas, and he manipulated it to his own ends.
And the fair amount of ruthlessness is that he didn't care what anybody thought of him for doing so.
He'd always turn the negative into a positive, wouldn't he? And I think he sort of give rise to some of the modern day, not unjust circuses, but entertainment as a whole. I think he'd done his fair share for entertainment and pushed that forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
He actually brought it to the masses rather than just the elite.
Yeah.
Yes, you can imagine that sort of back then the only people that could have actually sort of experienced these sort of experiences would have been the wealthy. But Barnum sort of realised that is not where the real gold lies. And if you can get the masses on your side, you are onto a good thing and a nice little earner.
Yeah.
Well, in 1841, he actually started to cast about for a legitimate undertaking. Before this, he was just touring with the odd act. We're not talking circus. We're talking like small music halls and stuff like that. So he actually outmanoeuvred wealthier bidders to acquire John Scudder's American Museum in New York City. Now, this is an absolutely amazing building, isn't it? It was a 5-story marble structure. When you think of that, you think, gosh, that's a phenomenal achievement for him to have to appropriate.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just a building he actually purchased, and by the looks of it, he got all the exhibits as well within it. So, that would have been a good starting point for him.
See, but then it also ties into some of the macabre stuff because he had stuffed animals and, like the waxwork figures and, similar conventional exhibits and stuff. So, with the taxidermy especially, it sort of tie into what he was used to as well and the macabre side of things. Yeah.
And then from that, it's got a good base to then build and add what he wanted to add into to make it an amusement, a living exhibition as well as alongside all of these other things that were already there. He could then build on that. So it's a good base for him. It was a very savvy move for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, certainly. Because this was particularly at a time, as I touched upon earlier, where amusements per se, they weren't actually sort of viewed like we do today. I mean, the concept of public entertainment at the time was perceived as sort of questionable, and even considered inappropriate to most people living in America at the time, at least, because it was more or less sort of you should aspire to a higher standard of moral and civil behaviour, whatever that means, but yeah.
And I say it because of it, he actually was able to bring it more to the masses than the elite, so
yeah.
Okay, so it might push you, but it was like, a day out, it was a different thing to what they normally would have had. So he challenged the popular ideas of the time, didn't he, with his museum?
Yeah, he did, very much so. And as I said, he sort of like pushed it forward and just wouldn't take no for an answer sort of thing. And I think like he understood people. Yeah. And I think that was, really part of his success.
very much so. Although, I say, these days we'd look at it and sort of like question his marketing abilities, you know. But by doing what he did, he actually brought knowledge into the public forum of things that were strange and unusual. And, you know, we were talking about how by actually taking on some of the living curiosities that he did, he actually brought those into the public mind more, rather than making them as something. Yes, he's putting them up on stage and saying, "Oh my gosh, look at this bearded lady," or "Look at this tiny midget person." You know, he's actually bringing that and showing people that they're the same as everybody else. They just might have a different physiology, but they're the same. And it actually, I believe that this is kind of one of the areas it started social acceptance of that. Whereas people would go along for that curiosity and the macabre and that what's the word? You know, viewing them with disdain. Yeah, that. In a way, when you're confronted with something you don't know, it becomes then familiar, and it takes the fear out of it.
Yeah.
You know,
see, I think it's pretty much like a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. It's like, on one hand, you know, he's earning money out of these people. You know, he's basically profiting on their disabilities. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, for them, it's taking them from the. I mean, this was a line from the movie. Actually, they said like they were being taken from the shadows and thrust out into the eye of the public, and it was almost like he was saying to everybody, you know, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And that is very prevalent, especially today. You know, that you see that sort of thing in the media, especially with mental illnesses and stuff going around. But it was almost like the birth of that movement to accept people with disabilities.
Yeah.
I
mean, reviewing it now, I was going to say, it's that double-edged sword, isn't it? Because we look at it now as it's moralistically wrong to have showcased these people in the way that he did. I mean, one of the exhibits he actually marketed as "What is it?" in bright capitals across the front of the museum, and all it was actually an African American. The guy William Henry Johnson was actually a cook. Previously he was a cook, but he brought him out of the shadows of the kitchen and hidden away, and put him in his museum with the marketing of "What is it?" You know, and people flocked to see it. You know, he would market some children he got from El Salvador. Again, nowadays children, workplace, all those kind of things is unacceptable, but back then it wasn't. And he marketed them as Aztec children, you know, with a whole mythology about the Aztecs and stuff like that. But they were just children from El Salvador. So, Siamese twins, Chang and Eng.
I think, you know, if Barnum didn't do any of this, I think our outlook for disabled and curiosities, for want of a better word, we wouldn't have the same attitude.
It seems you look at this, and this is like the birth of sort of like the acceptance of, even though, you know, the way he went about it is questionable now, but it does have to be taken in the context of the time. Yeah. But it is sort of like the very tentative steps, the outing into society acceptance that there were people around that were different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. Now he became basically the American Museum, Barnum's museum, became a hub of culture in New York, and it actually was the most popular attraction for 23 years.
Which is actually most of his career, actually. I mean, apart, we always sort of like assume Barnum, you know, sort of having sort of like these sort of like freak shows and, you know, sort of oddities in women, but this museum contained all sorts, you know, sort of glass blowing exhibits, and, you know, there was sort of, and you can go there, and there was theatres there and everything, so you can go there for a whole range of stuff. It just wasn't generally the macabre, and stuff like that. You can actually go and have an educational visit as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were learning things, they say he didn't just bring, the curiosities. He brought a whole range of cultural experiences in his museum that, some of them, like you say, glass blowing, you can go and see that in multiple places. The wonder of that is not so much like it was or would have been back then. And when you think about just glass blowing, that's not a curiosity, it's not macabre, it's not horrific or ethically or moralistically challenging, but it's a wonder. And it's that is the time of where people were being like subjected to a whole big broader world than the tiny little city or village that they lived in, and being shown that the world is a wide and variety place. And he brought that under his museum's roof and educated people. So when people are coming across these, they're filled with all sorts of emotive and emotions while they're going through the museum. So you can understand how exciting that would have been for people, because they're being subjected to so many different cultural experiences in a totally different way to how they would have been before. So that wonder, which we all talk about, the wonder of Christmas, for example, as you get older, it's lost its glow, isn't it, quite frankly? But only children get that wow factor now. People were experiencing this as adults. And I don't think there's ever a time now where we will have this again, this broadening, this, unless aliens come and then we get it through that, But, we've lost that in today's society because it's so prevalent. The internet, you can go and look at Papua New Guinea's, culture, and it's not a shock to you. It's, all sorts of things are accessible at your fingertips now. It wasn't back then, and this is what he encompassed in his museum.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a sight to see at the time, and sort of like I have a sort of like an interest in history, and especially this period. And as we touched upon earlier, it was the age of discovery. It was the golden age of discovery. There were things being discovered and reported, which were, and this is the age when Darkest Africa was Darkest Africa, the mysterious place. It was, and that would conjure up all sorts of images in the mental mind. And Barnum took those images which he knew people were having and sort of gave them to the people. He would sort of like bring the imagination out and put it on show in a physical form.
But you do, even now, you still do get places where you can go and see the macabre, especially like Ripley's Believe It or Not. They've made a success out of that particular genre.
Yeah, I suppose you could argue. And I must admit, I don't know a lot about Ripley's Believe It or Not, but from what I can gather, it is sort of basically an extension of Barnum's sort of ethos. Would you say?
Yes, definitely. I've been to one or two dotted around the country in the UK, and it is literally full of artefacts from Africa, especially with like deities and fertility dolls and all that sort of stuff. They've got like shrunken heads. They even had the Fiji Mermaid, I think, in one of them. I don't know. I can't remember now. It's a long time ago. It would have had a copy of it, possibly, as opposed to the real thing. But it was just a place where you could go and actually see these things. And it makes, it's one thing looking at them online and looking at pictures, but when you actually go and see the physical item or a replica, it just makes it a little bit more real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he had a very good, Barnum had a very good way of putting something that was quite factional, facts, true, real life, against something that was completely fake. He was also very good at that. So like you talked about the Fiji Mermaid, that was one of the things of Barnum's museum. Nowadays, it's fake. They didn't know back then. He had no problem at all exploiting people's ignorance, basically. You know what I mean? So if you put something factual against something that's fictional, You know, people would believe that both equally because they have no knowledge base. Nowadays, we'd look at that and go, oh, that is so obviously fake. You know, but if you don't know, you've got ignorance in that, or you just haven't got the knowledge, then it becomes even more, oh my God, it's got a mermaid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's been proved to be a fake, which, you know, but again, part of that is the amazing things he was putting on offer for people, and it all becomes very sensory overload, I would assume, because you've got so much, not just, it's not like a museum as in, you like today you go to the British Museum, it's very sedate and there's just lots of glass cabinets with, you know, lots of artefacts in them and lots of little cards telling you about them. This is a living, breathing exhibition. So you've got exhibits like the Fiji Mermaid in a glass cabinet, but then you've got the world's tallest man, or the woman, or the shortest man, or you've got the bearded lady, and you've got, you know, the twins, the Siamese twins, and you've got the theatre of it, and you've got the exhibitions of the glass blowing, and you can imagine the sensory overload of this. I mean, the museum on its peak was open 15 hours a day, and had as many as 15,000 visitors a day.
Yes, that is actually quite something. I mean, sort of, they reckon in the 23-year span, I mean, the whole population and some was actually circled through that museum. I mean, and that's incredible. The population of America back then was something like 33 million, and I think the overall entrance sort of tot up, and at the end was something like 36 million. You know, so it just shows, you know, people would go back again and again to actually see the stuff.
And talk about accessible. It was only 25 cents admission.
Yeah, which was accessible for everyone. And Barnum had this sort of another sort of excellent sort of thing, and he used to put exhibits on display and sort of leave them be for a little while, and then he would put the rumour out that they were fake, so people will come back to see them again. You know,
to see how they got it, how they managed to fake that.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, oh, we got took in by that. I've got to go and see that again for my own eyes to see how they did that. Like, you know, you talk about the Fiji Mermaid. Funnily enough, we were looking at this the other night when we were talking about the show, and in today's modern eyes, you can see it's half a fish and half a monkey. Yeah, that's been sort of like coupled together somehow. But back in those days, with no knowledge of that, you can understand, can't you, how people say it's well done. Don't get me wrong, everybody; it's incredibly well done. But you can understand why people would have like taken that as face value.
Well,
absolutely.
It even has the right name, Fiji, and that conjures up, you know, a lonely island out in the Pacific. Again, you've got the mind sort of working there, you know, of the exotic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of themes here running alongside the paranormal, in case you hadn't noticed.
Yes. Oh,
yes. Especially with the cryptozoology stuff going on.
Well, it certainly feeds into that, doesn't it?
It feeds into it. The whole thing is just screaming what we see played out day to day in the paranormal field. You know, the showmanship, the seeing something that you haven't seen before, you know, someone putting something out, and is it fake or is it not fake, you know, and that discernment of that. And it's, there is a lot of themes going on here that, you know, we see played out, like I said, in the paranormal field. Now, Barnum's self-professed goal was to make the museum the talk of the town. And as I say, he wasn't above playing to people's ignorance and credulity from time to time. He capitalised on his most famous attractions, and he would get the media on board to help publish articles saying that they were fake when they weren't fake, or they were fake. You know what I mean? It was one of those, isn't it? You never knew with him where you stood with Barnum. That's one other thing. He was always like, just when you think you pin him down, he pulls the rug out from your feet and says, nah, that was fake. And then they'll all go back and see it again, and then it'll go, oh, but, you know, this one's real. Was it real? Was it not real? It leads that air of mystery, doesn't it, as well?
Well, we get that in the paranormal as well. You know, when we go out and experience something, you know, we're only there for a certain amount of time, especially on an investigation at a castle or a fort or something. So you're only there for like, what, 6-7 hours? If you
Mhm.
experience something, you go away, or you don't realise you've experienced it until you look at the footage back, and then you want to go back to see whether or not you can recreate what happened.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So, even in the paranormal field, we still do that. And it's no different. I mean, you go to see a museum artifact, and then he turns around and says, "Oh yeah, it's faked," and you genuinely thought that it wasn't. It's like, okay, let's go back and just see how he fooled me.
Yeah, it is,
yeah,
isn't it? But that pushes you forward. That
Yeah,
becomes your inner curiosity of going, well, how did they do that, or how did he do that? And then clever marketing employ on top of that. We've seen locations use these tactics before now. I mean, God, like, I think every pub in various locations around the UK in particular is the most haunted pub in the
yeah,
UK. It's,
oh yeah,
we see those kind of tactics being used. It's quite funny. Um, oh gosh, the American Museum was an enormous enterprise, and it promoted as having 850,000 exhibits and curiosities. That is extraordinary, right?
that is
it
incredible.
is
I've
massive.
I've sort of seen pictures of the museum, well, sort of artists and renditions, and yeah, and by the looks of it, it took up about half a block, I think. It was sort of like several buildings knocked into one.
Mm.
No different from, like, you think about the Natural History Museum. I mean, that's incredibly enormous,
Yeah,
and it's not just what goes on the floor that you get to see as a museum, is it? There's the whole, the back. What goes on behind the scenes at the Natural History Museum is actually incredible as well. I mean, there's workshops and laboratories and, exhibition preparation areas and,
yeah,
all that sort of thing. And you've got to remember, Barnum had wax figures department producing, like, a bit like Madame Tussauds in this day
yeah.
and age. He had taxidermy departments. He had an aquarium for goodness sakes. Do you know what I mean? In operation, you can imagine the people that worked there, and alongside the exhibits, the living exhibits of, like, the world's tallest woman or the man's, shortest man in the world. When you've got all these people, the performers, the lecturers. Oh my God! When you think about it, it is a whole industry. This is absolutely one of the biggest operations for entertainment that was around.
Yeah, I mean, God knows what it would have been like to be the manager of the place. It must have been an absolute nightmare. I mean, where would you start? Well, he must have subdivided it all into their own departments, and obviously, but yeah, it sort of. But for the time, it seems incredible. It really does.
It really, really does. Now, he was the ultimate showman. I mean, when they did the film, they shot Hugh Jackman, top hat, tails, circus
Yeah,
performer. He is coming across as that. Now, you can imagine him holding that role and, masterfully guiding everybody through this entertainment extraordinaire experience. And the reality of that is probably he was in an office just making the decisions of what's next, and everybody else was doing the work, but he wasn't shy of bringing the living curiosities.
yeah. I mean, he was very much obviously into the whole macabre, and he's sort of bringing the cabaret sort of acts
That's the word.
forward as well.
Hmm.
So it's not just that either. It's as you said, like he had an aquarium for weird and wonderful fish, I suppose. But there was just so much that he, entertainment wise, he just correlated it all in one area, one place for people to go, and I think that sort of made him a big success as well, because there wasn't anywhere like this before. So you could go one night and go just to the circus, but then the next night or something you could go to the aquarium, or to go and see the glass blowers and other cultural experiences. And I think all that in one place is quite an impressive feat, really.
I think it's an actually incredible feat.
Yeah.
And he wasn't scared of approaching people that had problems. You know, I mean, the four-legged woman, Myrtle Corbin, joined his sideshow at 13 years old. I mean, that's incredibly young now. She was born with a medical condition called Dipygus.
Dipicus? Yes, I think that says Dipicus, yeah.
Which basically means that she was born with 2 pelvises and 4 legs.
Yes.
Now, other, competitors, shall we say, tried to recreate this. You know, they tried to falsify it and put it out there themselves, but they never did it to the level that he did it, because he got the real article, and other people weren't actually able to fake that. And so Myrtle became really popular because she was ultimately the real deal. You know what I mean? It was like, and the Greek albino, George Constantinus. God, now this is where people are now starting to realise my pronunciations sometimes aren't that good.
You do weird.
He was only odd because he was foreign.
Yes, this did tickle me when I sort of looked at it. You know, it was just the way it was written, and he was odd because he was foreign, and just basically a tattooed sort of foreign person, wasn't it?
Yeah, a tattooed
It's just like the Western world meets the world, basically.
Yeah, but he did have a little bit of a backstory, you know. But Barnum would just paint over his backstory, you know, just put a thing like he was the descendant of a noble Greek man and who was kidnapped by Chinese Tartars against his will, you know. So that sort of like it's that backstory that attracts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the key point, isn't it? It's the backstory as well. In the same way that we look at some ghost stories, backstory, and we believe everything that's said to us without actually checking the facts.
Yeah, because you would hear that story first, and you think, oh, let's go and see the man himself. That's how it works. It's got to be what Barnum was actually doing. And that story would have been put out in the press. You know, I've got a mysterious man from Albania who was kidnapped by Chinese Tartars and who's a descendant of a noble Greek man. And everyone goes, got to go and see that.
And the extent of the tattooing that he had as well. I mean, he was like tattooed from head to toe, which back then would have been... tattooing, I would imagine, back then would have been like the premise of sailors, and not many people would have been, particularly to the extent that George had tattoos. He was like covered in head to toe, whereas you might have seen the odd tattoo on a sailor or something, but generally, general public tattoos, very rare, right?
But I reckon George wouldn't look far too out of place today when you walk up and down the street seeing the amount of tattoos and some people have now, but there you go.
Yeah, I mean, there are people out there, obviously, that have tattoos for recreation, but we also understand that tribal tattoos actually have a meaning behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
so, you know, he wouldn't be so much of a curiosity these days.
He probably would have gone one step further these days. It wouldn't just be tattoos, it would be in multiple piercings as well.
Yes, he'd probably have half an ironmonger's shop and hanging out of his face.
Faraday cage.
Which sort of goes to show social acceptance of that. Is I mean, I've got a guy that comes into the shop where I work, and he's got facial tattoos and his whole head's done and he's covered in them. And you don't even blink an eye now. Don't even blink an eye at it. And he's lovely. He's such a lovely bloke, and that. Whereas back in those days, they would have crossed the street to avoid someone like that. You know, it would have been oh my God, look at him. It's different and weird and strange, and why would you do that? And you know, without actually giving that person the time of day. Whereas, you know, they, like we've said, it just goes to show it brings the humanity to a condition or a lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, now Jojo the dog-faced boy was with Barnum as well. He signed his contract when he was 16 years old. This is Fedor. Oh gosh,
here we go.
Jetty Chew.
Oh dear, yeah. Yeah, it must be
We'll
Jeff.
go with that. Fedor.
We'll go with that.
We'll just go with Fedor. Now, he was born with hypertrichosis hair, basically. Full hair covered him, basically, his whole face. So, basically, wolf boy, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, look at him. He's got all this hair going on. Barnum created a false backstory. Great at doing backstories. You know, it's almost like you want Barnum to do your own backstory.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which involved a hunter who tracked and captured him, and he claimed that he was an uncivilized savage. And, you know, Fedor himself would actually buy into this and help create the illusion by regularly barking and growling like a dog when he was on, you know, when he was performing. It becomes a performance then, doesn't it? You've got the acts buying into this as well to make it more of a show.
Yeah. I mean, but
Ooh.
I think what you got to realise with Barnum, I mean, he's sort of like exhibits, you know, the people that done this, they done it willingly as well. They weren't actually forced into doing it. You know, it's as if it gave them sort of an outlet as well. And even though we look at it as being a bit, you know, sort of it wouldn't be accepted now, and rightfully so, but it was the tentative steps of bringing people with sort of unfortunate disabilities or deformities and stuff like that into the public eye.
Very much so. Very much so. And he would do extremes of human nature as well. So like the human skeleton, Isaac Prague performed with Barnum at the museum as the human skeleton. Now this actually brings into mind, now I'm going to give a little shout out here because this really reminds me of a condition that we support as a trio, very much so. Now, Isaac started, at the age of 12, he started losing weight despite his healthy appetite, and he actually went down to a weight of 43 pounds. Nowadays, we would know what that condition is, right? It sounds like lipodystrophy, which is a very rare, very unknown condition, and causes you to lose weight no matter what, you know, you are. It has a multiple of other health issues that go alongside that. If you want to know more about that, check out the Paranormal Charity Warriors. They run events that are in support for raising awareness of lipodystrophy and researching. That's it. That's the word I was searching for. The research behind lipodystrophy. And they do a lot of great goods. And this is run by a lady called Joanne Trehan, who has a son with this condition, which is what came to our notice through the paranormal field. And to help raise awareness, we decided as a team that we would support Jo in whatever she did in regards to lipodystrophy research and awareness. And Sean is absolutely an amazing little character. He's absolutely fantastic. But he has got this problem. And this is when I was reading about Isaac Sprague, this is what I think probably he had. Except at the time, it wouldn't have been diagnosed.
No,
there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to medical conditions. So, yeah, I mean, at that particular time period, it would have been a curiosity.
Mm-hmm. It would have been, and he was put out as the human skeleton, as I say. But then he would actually couple that with an overweight performer to show the difference between the two. So you'd have Isaac being incredibly thin, and then somebody who was incredibly large and obese to highlight the difference in weight, you know.
Yeah.
He would show off the starkness, you know, sort of, so that would probably sort of add to it as well. It would be such a sort of contrast, you know, so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, he also had Tom Thumb. Charles Sherwood Stratton was part of Barnum's little act. He actually stopped growing at 18 months. He was tiny. He was 25 inches tall. And only
small,
weighed,
isn't it?
Tiny. And only weighed 16 pounds. Now, Barnum persuaded his parents to exhibit him at $3 a week, which back then we go, well, that don't sound a lot, but actually that's not too bad, right?
I should imagine so, yeah. I should that was a good wage anyway, yes.
The only issue I have with this is he was only 4 when he left home to go into the museum. And Barnum moulded Tom into an entertainer. He dressed him up in expensive and exquisite wardrobes, and he presented him as General Tom Thumb. It was like a miniature version of all the characters.
Yes, he became sort of Tom's or Tom Thumb's sort of mentor. I should imagine his parents sort of, not gave him over to Barnum, but, sort of saw the advantages and thought that he could have a better life, which, by all accounts, he actually did.
Well, that's it. I mean, this is what I was saying about the whole double-edged sword thing, because although Barnum wanted him as a curiosity to earn him money, at the same time, when Tom was living with his parents, he was, going by some of the film as well, he was almost like shut away, hidden. When in the movie he went to Tom's house and he was like, I want to see your son, and they're like, well, we haven't got one. Like, yes, you have. But that he was shut away, he was hidden from society because of his disability and the size of him as well. And it was almost like Barnum took him and pushed him forward into the limelight and, increased his confidence, and, it was a huge confidence booster for him, and which made him better.
Yeah.
Than what he would have been shut away. And I think, he'd done that for all of his acts, and they did have I think they had, like the family atmosphere knitted together sort of thing in their own little community, and it gave them such confidence that they would, go out into the streets and stuff and sing a lot. No, that was just a film, to be fair.
First into song everywhere they go.
Yeah, but
you really
know what I mean?
It was the musical theatre side of things, haven't you, darling?
We'll have to do that the next time us three go out.
Yeah,
and when the lockdown, when the lockdown is lifted, and we should go to places just burst into song.
Oh my God! Now he did.
It improved their life and their quality of life as well. Yes. So at the same time, although he was earning money, he did them a real big favour.
He certainly brought them into a different way of life than the one they would have had before. In his first week of performing Tom Thumb, in his first week, he had 30,000 people attend to see him. You know what I mean? So when you think about that, yes, God, this poor little 4-year-old at the time, is being shoved out. We'll get this little 4-year-old midget that's, we'll dress him up in Napoleon and shove him out on stage. It probably wasn't as coldly done as that. They wouldn't have just go out and perform then. There would have been a whole education behind that to get him to be able to get on stage. Because if you know anything about 4-year-olds, you can't force them to do anything they don't want to do.
Yeah, true. Right?
No matter what you've got. In all honesty, anybody with a 4-year-old out there knows exactly what I'm talking about.
You still have problems with teenagers, don't you, Kerry?
Oh, I certainly do. And we are going to take a quick break right now, and we're going to continue with our whistle-stop tour of P T Barnum, and then talk a bit more about how it buys into the paranormal right after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, here exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Now, before the break, we were talking about Tom Thumb and his time with P T Barnum, and we were sort of saying that the showmanship and the acceptance that Barnum had for people that were a little different or had disabilities or medical conditions unknown at the time did bring him many exhibits to his museum and stuff like that. I mean, he he wasn't just stuck in his museum. He took him actually on tours and actually visited Victoria and Prince Albert at Buckingham Palace. This was Tom Thumb, it was. But he wasn't very lucky. I mean, we've so far, it's very idyllic, isn't it? He's making lots of money. His exhibit is very popular. You know, everything's very idyllic and showmanship and buying into this, you know, this show business. Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing. But whether or not you agree with him morally or ethically in this day and age, he was very blessed by the seams of it up to this point. But he wasn't always. He did have some incredible bad luck, didn't he, guys?
He did. He was very prone to fires breaking out, both at his mansion and even the museum. That burned down at one stage or twice, didn't it, I think?
Yeah, it burned down actually twice, yeah, and, you know, with actual sort of consequences. I mean, you know, a lot of the animals actually suffered, obviously, when the museum burnt down, and including his two favourite exhibits, which were two giant whales that were actually boiled alive during the fire, which couldn't have been too nice for them.
No, that would be one hell of a fish and chip shop, wouldn't it?
Ooh.
Yeah. It gives a whole new meaning to frying tonight, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, you two guys. Inappropriate humour.
Just imagine the size of these aquariums if they had two whales in it.
Well, yeah, that's a big aquarium. And that was all inside a building as well. That is sort of something to think about.
It most certainly is when you think about just that small fact. You know, now he does seem to be plagued by fire, doesn't he?
Yes, I mean, was that his burden, his curse, perhaps?
Who knows? Who knows?
What goes around comes around.
But he did seem to be burdened, or did seem to have this phenomena follow him. It must have been, oh, for God's sakes, not again. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Even his house was burnt down at one point. Sorry, I've just heard a strange noise in the house.
Oh, right.
Oh, I've got weird stuff going on in my house today. It's a bit alive today, my house.
Just come to say hello.
Pardon?
It's Barnum. He wants you for his new museum.
Oh, yeah, maybe I'm a nice little curiosity for him.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Or maybe I am channeling the spirit of P T Barnum. Oh, God, I don't know if I want that. Even his house, I say house, it was more like a palace, burnt down in 1857. Now, it was the second time, it was after the second time that his museum burnt that he decided to go into the circus business. Now, although his name has already been linked with circuses, it wasn't really circus in the traditional way that we would vision a circus. He had a circus ring in the museum where he would do acts and stuff like that, but he actually took it on the road at this point, right?
Yeah, I think after the fires and everything, he thought, well, you know, I'm not going to do this much longer. I'll just take it out on the road. And he probably felt safer that way.
Probably, but he didn't do this until he was past the age of 60.
Yeah, so this is one of the big sort of things a lot of people automatically associate Barnum with the travelling circus, but that isn't actually so. And as you say, Kerry, he never entered the circus sort of arena until quite late in life.
Yeah, and this is where he links up with Bailey, and the circus is the Barnum and Bailey Circus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did give the American. Sorry.
I was going to say, isn't this sort of where he sort of handed over the business to Bailey, though?
It certainly seems he went into partnership. Yeah, he's probably...
Well, he went into partnership with Bailey, but then because he was 60, he just wanted to sit back and let Bailey take it forward, but Barnum's still involved. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think Bailey had the circus originally, but Barnum sort of brought into it. So he brought into a working circus, so to speak, to add his sort of flair to it.
Mm-hmm. And again, it was the gigantic spectacle that he is well known for by now with his museum. He actually did the same for the circus. It was the greatest show on earth, a travelling museum full of live exhibits and strange curiosities. And that's sort of where he went with that. And it totally is the master of the ring, isn't he? He's the ringmaster, and you can see him in that role very easily.
Definitely.
Yes. I mean, he's, I think you sort of watch modern circus now. I mean, the ringmaster, the way they dress and stuff. I mean, that's got to be a representation of Barnum they're trying to pull off.
Very much so. He wasn't just a showman. He also wanted to go into politics in 1865. He ran for, successfully, I would say, the Connecticut General Assembly.
Yes, and
I think this is where he picked up the clowns for his circus.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe not. Who knows? Who knows indeed. Now, he confessed in a speech. Now, this is sort of where you don't know the line with Barnum. You don't know what is said for genuineness or whether or not it's just the act for the role he was trying to take on. He actually said, he confessed during a campaign speech that whilst living in the South he had owned slaves himself, actions he since regretted. I did more, he said. I whipped my slaves. I ought to have been whipped 1,000 times for this myself. But by then I was a Democrat, one of those nondescript Democrats who are northern men with southern principles. So because he's put the political spin on it and used it to denigrate the other party, you kind of think he really wasn't particularly sympathetic or regretful about that action towards African Americans. It was just another spin on a story, and actually that probably didn't but he was successful, so he definitely was able to achieve and convince the masses in a way that other people, we talk about this, don't we? Every leader has to be charismatic in a way, and have that allure that is that X factor.
Yeah.
And it's very time orientated as to that particular X factor.
Mm.
And he has this in bucket loads.
Yeah, you wonder, if he had witnessed his political campaign, how much he drew upon his previous experience. I mean, he must have done. He knew how to deliver a speech.
Well, this is it. I mean, sort of going back to the film and the fact that his persona in the movie was very much the showman, the top hat, the ringmaster's coat and everything. But I think that is also quite metaphorical for everything that he done.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
He was very much the showman, and he would elevate everything, and he'd have such imagination and just bring enjoyment and joy to everything he done, and especially when it comes to the politics as well. He sort of lifted that up as well, if that makes sense.
He's like the ultimate spin doctor. We've seen it in play in recent years. I say recent years, it's probably about 30 years ago now, when you had Labour, the rise of Labour. Things can only get better. Tony Blair running for the Prime Minister position, and the spin doctor of Alistair, what was his name?
Campbell.
Was it Alistair Campbell? Very, very good spin doctor, and how to portray something across to the media to win the masses. And he had this. Barnum had this. We've seen this, many people in history have had this. But to give you a sort of idea of how it works, you only have to look at the Labour campaign at that time to witness it, to see that's what was happening, the spin on politics. And he brought this into the political forum. And it happens to this day and age, guys, by the way. I'm just saying that. I'm not going to get into politics of today, but the spin that goes on is incredible when you start looking at it. Mm-hmm. Now, there has always been to bring it back to the paranormal one, away from politics, because we don't want to get into politics. To bring it back... That's right. The Fox sisters have always been, multiple sites out there. So P T Barnum brought the Fox sisters to New York. Now, when we researched this, there are two very big camps on the Fox sisters. It's a whole show in itself, I feel, of the Fox sisters. It depends on what report you read or what account you read or whose book you read on the Fox sisters as to what perspective you get on it. You've got kind of two camps. You've got the incredibly sceptical viewpoint of that, and then you've got the urban myth legend perspective of that with a pure ghost story going on. They are banded even today in a lot of paranormal circles as the birth of spiritualism. And at the time, they probably were, at the time, how it started is always in, disrepute or, do you believe them? Do you not believe them is one of those questions. Yeah. Depending on the account you read, depends on the belief system, I believe, of the person who's writing the account. Now, it's been bandied about quite a lot that P.T. Barnum brought the Fox sisters to New York City. However, we didn't find anything to back that up, did we, guys?
No, we didn't.
Do you want to go ahead with that one of you two?
Okay, basically, although P.T. Barnum might have met them and wanted them as one of his curiosities, the sisters stayed at a hotel run by A.S. Barnum, located on Broadway and Maiden Lane, which was about 2 blocks away from Barnum's museum. So I think that's where the confusion lies, because obviously the Barnum surname's there, but they were actually cousins, and I think that's where, the over the years it's like, Barnum's connected to them. So in a funny way, he is sort of, but yeah.
There's probably no doubt that Barnum probably sort of met them or perhaps even attended a séance, but there's no real sort of evidence that it goes beyond that and connected to Barnum. But as Paul was saying, I mean, it was in fact his cousin they were probably more associated with.
Yeah.
It kind of when I was reading those accounts, I was thinking, if that's his cousin, maybe that's a direct competition kind of scenario going on. And,
well, you can see a bit of sort of like, well, I know they were cousins, but not siblings. But sibling rivalry. All my cousins very successful. I will go out and sort of try and ride off the back of the name and sort of find my own act.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think P.T. Barnum was very impressed with them anyway, because he sort of distanced himself from them and denounced them in one of his books in 1865, The Humbugs of the World.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it does show that Barnum did draw a line at certain sort of aspects, and particularly around sort of like spiritualism and fact and stuff like that. He did spend a lot of his time sort of debunking sort of particularly spirit photographers at the time, which was a phenomenon starting to emerge with the emergence of photography. He didn't pay a lot of stock in that, and he did actually sort of go out of his way to sort of bring down a few sort of famous spirit photographers of the time, quite successfully as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is where sort of like the Barnum Effect and the Barnum statement sort of comes into play, especially sort of debunking some of the mediums of the time. Because in the Victorian period, you had like a rise in spiritualism, and that became quite a forefront, and people got into it, and it did become a big thing in the Victoria period.
I'll go for an explosion rather than a rise. Explosion of spiritualism. Now, the Barnum Effect, or, that expression, actually originated with a psychologist called Paul Meehl. Now, he called it that because Barnum was the ultimate psychological manipulator, and this is why he's called the Barnum Effect, the Barnum Effect. Could be why Barnum was so disparaging against the spiritual movement, because he could see through a lot of it, where a lot of people, he used those same techniques to get people into his museum and pay to visit the curiosities and stuff like that. He was seeing the same effect or the same techniques, should we say, being used for people buying into the spiritualist movement, the mediums, the seances, you know, the same kind of psychological triggers to get people to believe in you.
Yes. I mean, you're certainly on the right track here. I mean, I'm sure when Barnum met individuals for the first time, he didn't just see them, he actually saw through them. Whereas sort of, when we go out, we tend to take stuff on face value, and he realised the public would take stuff on face value, but he had more of an insight of how people would see things, and that is what he manipulated. And I think in the spiritual movement, he just saw it as it was. You know, he goes, "I know what you lot are up to." I can imagine him saying that.
Yeah, and like Paul said, it's almost like there was a line. He was prepared to put things in front of people, you know, to bring it to the fore, you know, people with conditions and, you know, things they'd never seen before, you know, exhibits and living exhibits, all that sort of thing. He was prepared to put it in front of them and even manipulate them into believing what they were seeing, even though it was fake. But
it was tangible. People could see it, touch it perhaps and stuff. And he was prepared to go that far, but I don't think he was prepared to go into like the supernatural realm, because that was something, you know, he knew he couldn't prove, but his work did disprove a lot of it.
So we're talking about emotional manipulation. What Barnum was doing was an entertainment factor of emotional manipulation. What spiritualism was doing, in his view, in his perspective, was inappropriate emotional manipulation, because it brought into people's fears regarding death. Bearing in mind, mortality rates were high, particularly with children and stuff like that back then. Right? So he didn't like the fact that people would manipulate people, very dismissive of people that would emotionally manipulate people in that way, and could see through them. So it was too easy to see through for him. It was too blatant to see through. Whereas what he was doing was different. The mental gymnastics of this is quite strange, isn't it? Because you could argue it either way. He was manipulating and you know, taking advantage of people with problems and disabilities and putting them as showcases and, you know, exhibits to mock effectively. But when it came to spiritualism, I think because he saw through it so easily, how could anybody else believe that? But a lot of people did.
Well, yeah, it's particularly a mark of the time, and as you pointed out, Kerry, I mean, child mortality rate, and America hadn't long come out of the American Civil War, which had a huge death toll, so there was a public thirst for the spiritual, which sort of kicked off the spiritual sort of revolution at the time. People were desperate to sort of like have some sort of confirmation that there was life hereafter for their loved ones departed.
Exactly. Now, another expression that's been put towards Barnum, which isn't true, is there's a sucker born every minute. Everyone puts it to P T Barnum, saying that it wasn't. It was a guy called David Hannum, who was part of a syndicate that purchased the Cardiff Giant. Now, he said that apparently when he heard that Barnum was planning to display a fake giant. A fake giant. A fake of a fake giant.
Yeah.
So you could understand why these big statements are being attributed to Barnum, because he was this ultimate big character showman. Now, the Barnum effect is also called the Forer effect. Now, this is a phenomenon that occurs when individuals believe that personality descriptions, we see this in astrology quite a lot, don't we? Describe specifically to them more so than to other people, but actually it's so general it could apply to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, this is a weird one. For me, who works in a spiritual way, I kind of understand this, but I think it's very dismissal as well, because yes, you can start off with the statements. I mean, God, if you've got a spirit telling you that, you know, the person in front of you was loved and they were, you know, they love you and that they're still around, so don't worry, it's very comforting and stuff like that. So when you're doing that for somebody, you need to be able to have the connection to pull forward a piece of information you couldn't possibly know. The person in front of you knows you couldn't possibly know that, and then translate that to that person.
Yeah.
However, the Fora effect shows you how it can be read in the way that it shows you a lot of cold readers, right?
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, definitely it does. And this is sort of where the Barnum statement comes into play. So we could turn Richard into a medium now.
Oh, I'm not too sure about that. I'll struggle with this bit, but I'm sure if Kerry would want to do a reading for everyone out there.
Oh, I think Paul should do it.
Oh, I don't.
Okay, so you could do something like this, right? Oh God, I can't believe you'll get me to do this bit. It's going to make me so bad. It's untrue. Right, okay, so you've got a person in front of you. You go, oh gosh, you know, hello, thank you for coming. Sit down. Oh, I can tell you're a really kind person. You really like people to like you. So you go out of your way to help people, because you like people to like and admire you. But within that, you're very critical of yourself. You are very because you question your motives for doing that, but you have a huge capacity for this help, so don't underestimate that, because you are doing good out there. You're absolutely brilliant at that, but you can turn that to your advantage as well. Now you overly compensate sometimes, and sometimes you're not very self-controlled with that, but you're also very controlled. You've got this very double-side thing going on in your personality, but this makes people like you and drawn to you. Now you sometimes have serious doubts. You've got those mind monkeys going as whether or not you've made the right decision or done the right thing. I'm telling you now that the spirit are telling me that you are doing the right decision, you are making the right choices for yourself, and that you're fully supported by spirit whilst you're doing this. Now, you don't like a lot of change, but you kind of like a bit of change, but not too much. You don't take big change very well, but you can take general change quite easily. Go with the flow. You talk about this quite a lot with your family and your colleagues, but if there's a big change, you don't like that. Now, you find yourself, you take on too much of what other people think of you, so you you restrict yourself because you worry what other people think of you. Now, you need to not listen to what other people. You're doing the right thing. Spirit are telling me that this is the right thing to do in the right way. Don't listen to other people. It's your life. It's your decision. So you can, have got the capability and the capacity to do this for yourself. Now, don't find validation in other people. It's great if you get it, but you don't need that, because you know the answers to that. You know that because you're being backed up by spirit to tell you that. You're very extrovert. You like company. You're very sociable. But put you in a situation which is uncomfortable for you, in a big group of people you don't know, you question yourself and your ability to work in that environment. Again, it's like one of those, when you're comfortable and surrounded by people that love you, you're very comfortable, very outgoing. Put yourself out of that, you become very insecure almost. But this is where you need to be more confident in your own abilities, and that is what you need to draw through on that one. Now, it goes on like that. How did that sound, guys?
I couldn't take any of that. That was rubbish.
Oh, thanks, Rick.
Why were you talking about me? And you can put the cards away now, Kerry.
Yeah.
But can you understand how that translates sometimes? That could have referred to anybody I was talking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what the Barnum statements are about. It's things like, you have a great need for other people to like and admire you. You have a tendency to be critical of yourself. You have a great deal of unused capacity that you don't turn to your own advantage. You have some personality weaknesses, but you're able to compensate for those. You're very disciplined and controlled on the outside, but you tend to be worrisome and insecure on the inside. And you can twist those statements. These are very general statements that you can tailor to circumstance of the person in front of you. And actually, when you've got a person in front of you, you are actually making blanket judgments about who they are and their lifestyle by what they're wearing, by how they carry themselves in body language, by their tone of voice, by... there are so many judgments you can make, or stereotypes you can put on somebody from a multiple of things that you're seeing in front of you.
Yeah, because I also think I'm not being disparaging to all sort of mediums and psychics out there, but I think it is a human trait and that we don't realise, and we all do it. We can actually tell a lot from a person just by meeting them, and we probably do that and process that subconsciously. We give out a lot of signals.
Without even knowing it.
Yeah, and subconsciously the people you're interacting with will pick them up.
You can go further. You can look at a person of a certain age and go, oh, your parents, they've passed, right?
Well, there's that.
You can do that. You can, have they got a ring on their finger? You're married?
Mm-hmm. Those will be more sort of visual prompts, aren't they? Yeah.
Uh-huh. But these are things that you have to be aware of when you're going for a reading. You can look at a person like my sort of age, go, you've got children. I haven't got a ring on my finger. So it would be, I'm not saying someone's done this, I'm just using this as an example, everybody, by the way. Someone could look at me and go, oh, you're very creative. I've got my red hair and my red lipsticks and my nails are painted. I like to look after myself. You have children, but you're not with the partner. What I mean? You could make those sweeping judgments from that. Very confident person, somebody would say about me when I walk in a room, just the way I carry myself. Yeah. You're a very confident person, but you can be insecure in places. Well, isn't most people, those sort of things. But coupled with what your visual cues are, as well as the Barnum statements, you could do a whole hour's reading on somebody, but not actually bring out any relevant piece of information that is specific that that the medium couldn't possibly know, but pulls out.
Yeah, it's like these sort of like points that is what you hit them with. You dress them up a bit before and you tail them off, and that is the meat in the sandwich, and that is what people will grab on. That is the part of the statement they will recognise. And
that's what people link to. That's the pieces. Even if you could get, I've seen mediums do a reading where like 90% of it were no's, but they focused on the 10% that were the yeses. In the reading, and 90% of it was wrong, but 10% of it was right, so they were a great medium. I've seen that happen. I've been at plenty of mind, body and soul affairs to see it happen, working in action. And this doesn't just happen with mediums. It sounds like we're being very disparaging against mediums, but you've only got to look at astrology or horoscopes or palm readers or even magicians. It's that showmanship, it's that sleight of hand, it's that is what it buys into a lot of the time. You have to be very discerning. A good medium will give you information they couldn't possibly know about you. Mediums do not have the time to go online and do a Google search on everybody they meet.
No.
Right? So that anybody who says, oh, they searched that out, sorry, most mediums don't have time to do that, or even the knowledge on how to do that, quite frankly, some of them. They don't do that. A lot of mediums are genuine. I'm not sitting here saying that there's not. I've had mediumistic readings, throughout my life, and I do believe them. But I have had some fantastically accurate and information they couldn't possibly know that have come out actually after the reading. It was information I didn't even know. It was only when talking about the reading with my parents or, people like that, to things that happened in my life. I went to a medium reading once, and all I wanted to know was when I was going to have children. I was struggling to conceive at the time. So I wanted to go to a medium to have a reading to see if I was going to have children and whether it was going to be all right, and, comfort and reassurance for myself that is what's going to happen. And before I went, I basically turned around and said, I don't want to know anything else. All I want to know about is kids. Right?
Right.
that's what I sort of said, to put it out there in the ether. Now, I walked into the medium, sat down, very, very locally, very famous medium, and she went, oh, you've been married 4 years? And I was like, no. And she went, oh, I'm getting 4 years. And I was like, right. Anyway, later on in the reading, she said, I see 2 children. She goes, the first is a boy. She said, he's very bonny, very bonny. She goes, the cheeks on that one. She said, he's very bonny boy. She goes, and then I'm getting another 2, the number 2. And I was like, right, okay, fine. Now, other than that, in the reading, it was quite general. You know, day-to-day life, your job's going fine, your parents fine, blah, 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 blah. She got my nan had passed, and all my nan wanted to do was hug me because she wasn't a hugger in life, which was true. Mm-hmm. Anyway, afterwards, I come away thinking, oh, that wasn't very good. It was very general. Wasn't very happy with that. But after life played out, 4 years into my marriage, I had my first son. He was a boy. Even now, he's got the cheeks to die for. He's very chunky cheeked. This is Ryder, my eldest. Yeah, but it's 4 years into my marriage that I had him. 2 years following that, Leo followed. So, in regards to the kid thing, she was right, if you want to look at it like that. My nan wasn't a hugger in life. I thought she hated me, quite frankly. She never came near me, my nan. One side of the family, anyway. But she's going, I want to hug you. I never did that in life. She never did that in life. Do you know what I mean? Now, you could say there was a very general... You could say there were guesses. But it does seem strange that the one thing I put out there that I wanted to know, she was very accurate on. And I had 2 boys.
And it took, and that was only when you look back on it in retrospect that you sort of realised that she was accurate. So, yeah, I mean...
I do still have that reading, by the way, but it's on the old cassette. You know, like the old cassette. So I can't listen to it to see if any more since then's become accurate, because it's amazing, actually, what you forget that the medium has said. I mean, I could listen to it and go, oh my God, it's all right. You know, it's all accurate now, because I can't listen to it because I haven't got a tape recorder. But this is actually something I would say to anybody, is if you have a reading, record it. We all have the capacity now on our phones to record, don't we? We all have a voice recorder to record.
Yeah, and there's sort of like a lot of people do and readings over Skype and the internet now, and I think Skype and stuff, you have recording and capacities and stuff like that, so it should be actually quite easy now to actually record a session. And I suppose a good medium would not object, would they?
No.
If you tape record or a thing into the session, would they?
I have no problem if anybody I read for in regards to tarot readings. I have no problem if they want to record that. And if I'm doing it over Skype or something like that for a client, then I'll offer them that, because I have that capability of recording. You know, so I say, would you like a recording of this? I can do that for you. If they come to my home and they've got their phone, I say, you're quite welcome to record the session. You know what I mean? Because I do think sometimes retrospect and hindsight, when you look back at readings, becomes more relevant. However, sweeping statements like the Barnum statement should be discounted because they can relate to the majority of people.
Yes, which is the whole sort of point of the Barnum statement. I mean, I know a lot of psychologists and sort of like skeptics use it as that's it. I mean, they don't really go much beyond the Barnum statement. They just say and it's the Barnum statement. But I've sort of like been involved in this for a little while now, and you know, I do feel there are some generally talented, gifted people out there, and if they can come up with specific relevant stuff, then that is interesting.
So that's the issue that I've always had with mediums. You know, you'll go to like a stand-up medium and they go, well, I've got a message coming through and I'm sort of guided to the left-hand side of the audience. So can someone take this mail, whatever? If it was me, I'd be like, if I could see spirit, it'd be like, stand behind the person you want to talk to, and then you could go directly to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just the general vagueness of it I don't like.
I think sometimes it must be very difficult. We was talking about some of the famous mediums. It must be very, very difficult to maintain or to get a connection when you're sitting in front of a crowd of 400 plus people in a theatre. Where do you start with that? You have to sort of start with, you build the connection. We talk about building the connection with the spirit that's stepped forward or strongest at that time. So you might only get a male energy to start with, but you've got like a sea of 400 people and you've got a male energy step forward, and you go, okay, first of all, I've got a male energy standing here. He's in his late 60s, or seems to be in his late 60s. He's maybe hunched over a little bit, and you start to build up a connection. And then spirit, the connection between human and spirit it's been called before now like a untuned radio, and you have to tune into that vibrational level.
Yeah, but when they say like the spirit's standing next to me and this is who he is, why don't you just turn around and say, look, spirit, go and stand behind a person you want to talk to, and I'll pass your message on.
But you're looking at it, but you're framing it in a human frame reference of what you know. I mean, is that how, if there is spirits, and is that how they behave? Are they the form of us? You know, I mean, there's so many variables in that.
Well, it doesn't matter what form they take; they could still hover over the person that they want to talk to.
But is the medium actually sort of like physically seeing this ether, this spirit?
Well, I'm talking about the mediums. I'm talking about the mediums that do say, I've got a male standing right next to me. This is what he looks like.
But then he's not standing. He's not. I think when someone says they've got someone standing there, it's not. But when I feel an energy, it's not necessarily in form. It's how it feels. So that's where you get the clairs come in, isn't it? Clairsentient, clairaudient. You know, some spirit mediums only hear something being said to them. Some people only feel it. Some people taste it. Some people, there are different levels you can, and it depends on how you tune in. You're only as good as the tool that you're using. So spirit are using a tool that maybe hasn't got the capacity to see a physical manifestation of a spirit, then it's a vibrationary resonance thing, rather than I'm actually physically seeing a man stood next to you who passed this way. He's giving me this relevant information. It's not as clean as that sometimes. Sometimes it is, depending on how strong the connection is. And depending on...
Mediums need to be more specific then. So when they say it's standing next to me, they say, well, actually, no, it's not standing next to me. I can feel an energy next to me.
But then you're going into terminology, and that, as we've said before, the terminology of something is very relevant, isn't it? Then it becomes very relevant. But you talk as you find. When we write blogs, you write them as you kind of speak, and then someone comes along and says, oh, that doesn't read particularly well, but I know you, so I know how that would have been said. You know what I mean? So it gets taken out of context, perhaps. It's very easy to be sceptical of something you're not experiencing. Yeah. And this is where the problem is in the paranormal field. It's very easy to be sceptical. Barnum probably had 1,000 skeptics walk through the door and go, that's fake, that's not a real giant or a real tall person, they're on stilts, and that's not a real this and that. And he had the ability to put that and spin that to make it work for him. A medium is only as good as the tool she's been given, or exercises, or has. It's like a muscle. I've explained this before to some people. It's a muscle. You have to use it to develop it. Same as if you go to the gym. Yeah, if you don't go to the gym, your muscles are weak and flabby, and you're having to work that muscle, effectively your spiritual gift, to get stronger in that gift. So to not put a spin on it and be 100% accurate all the time, your personal physical energy levels are rising and slowing. You can't be completely attuned to spirit 24/7. It's exhausting. And if you're trying to do a mediumistic reading when you're exhausted, you try lifting a weight when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is, and that's why people are so sceptical of it. If you go for a reading and they're coming out with relevant information in regards to things that they couldn't possibly know, that you only knew, or didn't know, you were going to go out afterwards and talk to your family about it, and they go, yeah, God, that's right, yeah, Auntie Margaret did have a tin can in her back garden that she used to pop flowers in. You know, that it becomes more not general, it becomes more personal, and then you start the belief in that. And if you're going to a medium and they're saying, you know, I've got 5 children here, but there's only, and then this is going back to the era of the Fox sisters, and you've got, you have 6 children, but there's only 5 here. Do you know what I mean? On the plane, you that's where it becomes interesting. That's where it becomes not to be so dismissive.
Yeah.
You know, of that message being given. That's what you need from a mediumistic reading. You need specifics that are relevant to you and to you alone, not the general reading that I've just demonstrated.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think sort of where Paul's sort of, you know, you're talking about mediums, platform mediums who do
Yeah, absolutely
perform in front of a large group of people. I mean, surely the medium will have to tune his audience in as well, as opposed to like it all coming from him. He needs some sort of feedback from the audience, and this sort of saying, I'm getting something over the right-hand side. You know, it's not that he's sort of being vague, but he knows he's been drawn to. They are probably being drawn over to that side, but he has to get the audience to start to think, and perhaps he's linking into that, you know, a collective sort of thought, and he can pick out an individual from that collective thought.
But it's getting that collective mindset, though. If you go to a spiritualist church, it doesn't start off with the medium just popping up going, hi, everybody, I'm going to start reading now. There's a whole prayer and song, and, you know, generally they do a speech beforehand, which all helps get everybody into that mindset of now we're working. Now we're allowing spirit to step forward.
It's like a meditation beforehand for everyone, isn't it? A preparation. It's like you can't do any sort of work cold. I mean, it's like, you know, I have to be up for an hour before I can actually start working, because I don't function, you know, I can't jump out straight out of bed and start working, you know, physically, and that's probably the same on the spiritual plane as well. You can't start off from cold. You have to warm up.
You as a physical person can't. You know what I mean? No more than you could wake up, no more than you could like get up, go to the gym and start lifting the weight that you were lifting yesterday straight away. You need that warm-up session. You need that, you know, you need to get that muscle, again, back to the muscle analogy, you need to get that muscle working. So you do warm-up reps, and then you go into the full-blown work, you know, the building side, and that try the next weight up kind of thing. Because you'd just crack something, wouldn't you? You know, your breaks or stress... muscle strain or something if you went straight into lifting 400-pound weight without doing a proper warm-up, or you'd pull a hamstring if you went and just did a marathon without doing a proper warm-up. You know, it's the same factor. It's about getting the mindset and the vibration and frequency into that level so you can work spiritually, and you can work on that level in whatever way spiritually you are working. It's a very difficult one, but I would say use your discernment if you go for a spiritualist reading. If you get very general statements like we've stated in the Barnum statement, then I would be very suspicious of that person. There was an experiment that was taken place where I attended a MBS fair with a friend. That's all it was. It was a friend, a male friend, just a friend. And he said, just put a ring on your finger. He said, and we'll go and have a reading. And I was like, well, you know, that's a big fat lie straight there, putting a ring on my finger, because that's not what we are. And it was like, no, but it'll be interesting to see what's said. Now, we went and had a reading. We sat down in front of the lady, and she said, oh, you're happily married? No. No, we're not. Most definitely not. Do you know what I mean? But she'd straight away spotted the ring and assumed.
Yeah.
She'd made an assumption. Now, I'm not, you know... that's her putting that interpretation on what she's seeing in front of her, not Spirit telling her that, because Spirit would be telling her that, saying she just put that bloody ring on her finger. Do you know what I mean? That would have been more relevant to me. But throughout the reading, things became very separate. So although the medium had started off with a very negative, you know, incorrect statement, throughout the reading, she then went off, hang on a minute, she's going... this is going on with you, but that's not actually what's happening with you. And it was really strange how throughout the reading, it almost became a stronger connection where she went off in two tangents for two different people, which is actually more relevant. But her initial statement of, oh, you're happily married, was completely incorrect, because at that point she hadn't built up that connection. So it's very easy to be very dismissive. But don't we find this in the paranormal field? Everybody is dismissive of anybody else that has a gift because, I don't know, it's a very judgmental, dismissal world, the paranormal, isn't it? Of mediums, of people with gifts. It was like every paranormal team has to have a medium, or every person who goes in the paranormal ends up being a medium.
Yeah, I mean, you always, and even in the paranormal world, you know, all the infighting that goes on with evidence that one team displays, and whether that be photographic or recorded evidence, it's always dragged down by another team who weren't present during whenever this supposed evidence was taken. So yeah, it's certainly a human sort of nature to sort of disparage things you don't actually, to ignore things that you don't actually experience, or to parade them as sort of, or to be sceptical about them, or to call them out as actual fakes or something like that.
But it is very good to be critical minded when you view the paranormal or somebody else's experience.
It's good to be, yes, and it is good to be critically minded, but in some cases, you know, it's not good to be bloody minded, you know, which you see a lot going on.
And there's the difference, isn't it? And there's the difference. So we can learn.
And as like an investigator sort of experience, you know, don't ever be afraid to say that you're wrong, because, you know, we come up with these theories, and at the end of the day, they are theories, and someone along the line a little bit later could disprove your theory with an experiment or two, and turn around and say, well, yeah, okay, I respect your decision, I respect your opinion, I'm going to take that on board. And, you know, you might have been wrong, but it's fine to be wrong.
But it's that learning curve, isn't it? We talk about this. It's a learning curve through it all. And by showcasing things like the Barnum statement, or, you know, looking at someone who is very good psychological manipulator, it's not a bad thing to be, you know, critical of him, you know, and how he did things, but also bear in mind that the psychological manipulation he could see through a lot of people doesn't mean everybody's doing it. There could be people that have had, who are genuine mediums for spiritual activity, or genuinely able to externalize something from internal. We've talked about this quite a lot. You know, maybe we are the ones creating that link between people rather than it being a spirit. Maybe we are able to link telepathically to somebody to pull out that information. Or, you know, maybe we are able to manifest rapping and knocking and stuff without physically doing it ourselves. You know, maybe we are able to do that. And it's those cases we need to maybe not dismiss out of hand as fake. We need to maybe look at it in different eyes.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Paul?
Yeah, definitely. No, again, you know, I agree there. It's definitely interesting, and the idea is just to learn from it.
Yeah, look at cases. You know, I'm reading Supernatural by Colin Wilson at the moment, which is basically a guide through the unexplained, the unearthly, and the unknown. And even that is bringing information to me that in ways I hadn't thought of before, just from basically going through the learning curve that from other people, you know, from what was happening in the 1800s and the massive Victorian explosion of spiritualism through to what we now know today. There's not a lot different. We see it recreated time and time again in television programs and paranormal investigations that we watch on Facebook Lives. We haven't kind of moved on in that field particularly far from what they were doing back in the 1800s, have we?
No, I certainly feel sort of paranormal investigation, or sort of like the outlook on the paranormal, is still very much hemmed in by what was sort of pushed out Yeah, probably about 200 years ago now. See, and if you think about it, the Victorian era, so 150 years ago or so, we need to sort of start to we haven't got many answers from it. We've got a lot of debate and stuff, and we've got a good foundation. I think it's time, we started to move on and look in other areas to start to explore, because the mindset or the way we are doing it at the moment is not producing many sorts of tangible answers. They're giving some good pointers and leads, but we are not getting anywhere close to the answers that everyone always says they're looking for.
I think a lot of teams are more hung up on the experience as opposed to the research and investigation side of things. Because you'll see time and time again someone hit upon a really good experiment, and all these teams do are just recreate it. Mm-hmm. And, not that there's anything wrong with that, because you're gathering, to a degree, you're sort of gathering evidence and, what's occurring. So you've got the basic outline, but no one's actually looking into why it's happening.
People are chasing the experience. They're not looking into what causes the experience. That's where the work needs to head now.
Mm.
So it's cause and effect, isn't it? Everyone wants to experience the effect, but they're not worried about where the cause comes from, no matter where that comes from. Is it inherent?
There's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, we can now look at the multiple experiences of people are having, and it gives us a basis to start our research. So, but I don't think there's too many teams out there now that want to do that, because it's just a case of not only just recreating, but looking in depth into why it's happening. And some people don't even know where to begin, and find it a bit too hard, and they don't do it.
Do you think then that the public investigations, the paid for public investigations that people go on, is actually just part of showbiz?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if they were around, these sorts of public events were around in Barnum's time, and he would have been right up there putting them on. Now there's a thought.
Now there is a thought, isn't there? Although when he was coming across it, like in regards to the Fox sisters and the seance things, he doesn't seem to have bought into that at all. Like I say, it does seem to be a two-sided psychological manipulation, and that was a side he wasn't prepared to go down. Maybe he just didn't. Maybe he was too caught up with what he was doing. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what was going on in his head at that time regarding it? We know he was very dismissal of the Fox sisters in general. So we take a sort of, we kind of make a assumption of his perspective from that one incident, I suppose. But it is a showman. That's why we put out, or they put out on TV programs, it's for entertainment purposes only. So do we think then that people will sort of overlook that, the entertainment purposes only, and not look deeper?
I think people do, to be fair. That it is just a form of entertainment, and especially when it comes to public events. As an investigator, you can't really lock your location down, because there's too many people there. Ideally, for an investigation to document an experience, an experiment, you need a handful of people, and that's it. So you can account for everybody's movements. You can have a rigid structure to your investigation. And that is probably the best way of doing an investigation. But you want to do it, obviously, more than once. Because, we do, public events and stuff, and you're just there for 6 hours, and then you've done your, investigation. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, with these events, it's almost like, here's a taster. And as we spoke about it last night, actually, we said, there's a lot of people out there these days, especially in the UK, that go on these events and then 20 minutes afterwards go, well, actually, I could do this. And then they set up their own paranormal team and out they go.
Yeah, I think people are very confused with events organising in the paranormal. A lot of people that are in the paranormal seem to think that an event is an extension of their paranormal research, and when they do events, they're not. They are.
That's just basically recreating
the
experiment and having your experience.
Yeah.
And again, as I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a case of you need to investigate and research afterwards, and that is what is fading the paranormal field at the moment. And that, coupled with the fact that there are people out there that believe that they are experts at it and their opinions are fact.
I think that
they're unwilling to learn from that.
I think everybody is underestimating the human factor in this. Is it humans that are creating activity through their own belief systems or their own energy? You know, we've all come across teams that seem to have a lot more activity when they go out. Are they fooling themselves, or is it the energy in the team that's actually creating the activity that's occurring? That's, you know, we've talked about the Phillips experiment before now, where they manifested an actual phenomena through belief system in a character that they created. Teams could be doing this without even realising it. In fact, the paranormal field in general could be doing that for a location without even realising it. That's one thing we haven't been able to pin down, is activity that's occurring without the human factor. The human factor has to be there for activity to happen. It's a bit like what, you know, if a tree falls over in a wood and no one's there to hear it, does it still make a sound? It's that philosophical argument, isn't it?
It is, and that's something that could possibly be looked into. But yeah, I mean, you're completely right. I think sometimes people overlook things, and you know, having someone else's opinion sort of thrown into your mix. You know, there are a lot of people out there that will just ignore it. They'd be like, "Nah, we're right, you're wrong." End of story.
Yeah.
Actually giving it any credence.
But on the upside, you know, we're talking about the general sort of paranormal field that are out there, but there are sort of groups and organisations out there which are looking into this sort of seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
Do a lot of sort of, you know, academic research into this, so it's not all lost. You know, the battle isn't lost. I mean, it's just you should be discerning, and if you want to take it seriously and advance, there are sort of places you can go to do this. It may not be your local Facebook paranormal team. It's probably not the best place to look. But, you know, if you just dig under the surface and you do have that commitment and that sort of wanting to find out, I mean, there are groups and organisations out there that can help and would like your support as well.
Yeah, we did talk about this last week with Beth Darlington, so if you missed that show, don't forget, go back. You can catch that on the Paranormal UK radio network. And we talked about those organisations and not be intimidated by those if you want to push your knowledge forward beyond the recreation of a television programme.
You can also get all our past shows on our website at concept.com.
Excellent. He's great at that, guys, isn't he? He's really good at the old promotion. We rely on our Paul for promoting our website.
There's multiple ways of getting to see listen to our shows, and go to our website, check it out. There's loads of blogs and everything there. Mm-hmm. It's full of information.
So, guys, when you first thought we were doing a show on P T Barnum, and that had nothing related to the paranormal at all, I think we've proved a point in showing that psychological manipulation comes in many forms, and the showmanship, particularly in the paranormal field, is prevalent even in today's society. On that note, we'd like to say thank you so much for joining us on the Paranormal UK radio network. Join us again for next week's show. What are we talking about next week, guys?
I don't know. What have you decided?
We're taking this theme of blurring fiction and fact together, and we're going to be taking... we're looking at the blurring of the truth in regards to storytelling and how that has led to many misconceived ideas. over the years. A very interesting topic, this one. This one came out when I was looking at Phantom of the Opera. One of my favourite stage shows, everybody. So we're still in the show business kind of world, but we're having a bit more light-hearted look at that. I say light-hearted, who knows, it might be, it might not be. We'll have a little look at that next week. On that note, thank you all for listening. Say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.